everybody. It's that time of the week again. Well, it's a special time this week. I'm sorry I couldn't do it on Tuesday. I'm going to plug this microphone in. There's going to be a pop. I just couldn't do it on Tuesday. I was operating a follow spot for John Mellencamp. We are coming to you live in Austin, Texas at the Jim Alberti Theater, where we are keeping it weird. Because if weird was normal, it would be wired. And who wants to be a yuppie magazine catered to Gen X and Gen Z? Hear, hear. Oh, you can do it, Rachel. We got Rachel running props for you. Everybody say hi to Rachel.
Hi, everybody.
Here, here. Time for your fun Texas fact. The longest stretch of interstate in the country that go through one state is I-10, going through Texas from Orange to El Paso, nearly 400 miles. Pull up a chair. We got plenty of chairs right up front. And show me some love. Hit the love button. It will come back to you in infinity. Don't hit the anger button. We got plenty of that in this world. If you can afford to support me or this broadcast, you can do so through PayPal, Venmo, or Patreon. And I tell you, I want to keep this show in the black, so I could honestly use your support. Just a couple of bucks a month, you can go through Patreon. The Chris Chandler Show makes a world of difference. So you guys up for a story? Say, tell me a story. Type it out on the keyboard. Anybody saying hi over there?
Hi, David Steele.
David Steele's back. I think he can't make it on Tuesdays. He's a long time Chandler fan. Whoops. Now time for your moment of spin. Let's do the moment of spin there, Rachel. Stick around after the story. It'll be time for your moment.
It's not time.
It'll be time for your moment of spin after the story. I'm going to do a story that I've never done before. Y'all up for a start? Type it out on the keyboard. Tell us a story, Chandler. Tell us a new one. It's not really new, honestly. I wrote it about 5 years ago for an event that never happened. I'll just leave it at that. And it's possibly, I think actually is, the longest story that I have ever written. So get yourself comfortable. Oh, I got a visitor. You ready, Rachel?
We're ready.
Isaiah Cochran. By me. To this day, no one can prove if it happened accidentally, or perhaps it was carefully planned out. But legend has it, there was divine intervention. Sam Samwell was no relation to the Samwell circus dynasty that employed him. But no one at the Cockney Island Carnival knew that, and this fluke of fortune gave him a faint feeling of security as he watched jobs being cut with less accuracy than the great Throwdini, whose knife-throwing mishap last month actually increased ticket sales for a while. The band had been fired the week before, replaced by the steam age's latest contrivance, the Calliope. Now, Calliope is a peculiar name for that glamorized gadget, Sam said in an effort to console his young friend Piccolo Joe, who had just been sacked. Sam was surprisingly well read for a man who had resigned himself to operating a carousel some 25 years ago. Calliope is, as you must know, the muse of poetry, and this convoluted contraption is anything but poetic. But Joe replied with youthful optimism, "Don't worry. In the long run, this band will outlive that contraption. It will fall to the ground and never be rebuilt. We, however, may have to take to the hills, but we will rise again, and people all over the world will know our name, Idriac Gach." I never thought that was a particularly catchy name. Yeah, me neither. The year before, the Calliope had been bought by the carnival as a novelty in the hopes of putting a brighter face on the circus's nefarious reputation by appealing to children, or more importantly, the parents of children. Or more importantly than that, the wallets of the parents of children. It sat proud atop a bright red surrey with yellow wagon wheels drawn by a team of white stallions who had cardboard cones glued to their snouts so that they resembled unicorns. Fumes of black smoke fumed from the smokestack, filling her pipe organ with steam. Louvered doors popped open mechanically, and hand-carved monkeys and fezzes clanged cymbals as a brass drum music box spun Pop Goes the Weasel. She marched at the end of the parade, prompting the rubes to follow as it entered the big top. But after only a year, the goodie had been licked off the lollipop, and the babies to steal candy from were becoming fewer and farther between. Or so the locals said. It seemed that every candy-stealing, adultering, pickpocketing, lying, cheating, dastardly deed in the county was blamed on the circus, and politicians wanted it gone. And with the failure of the Calliope investment, now the banks did too. The struggling sideshow was coming under increasing pressure from the nearby town of Wynn. However, the locals publicly decried the fairgrounds. Privately, they would venture across the moat and pay homage to the dark side. Cockney Island was not so much of an island as it was a patch of land on the outskirts of town. They would have said it was on the other side of the tracks, but the railroad did not yet run to Wynn. Instead, it was separated from the town by a man-made canal, which they lovingly referred to as a moat. Technically, it was not part of the town, and the Chamber of Commerce liked it that way. Anything that happened there would not be counted in the regional statistics, and it helped Wynn keep her squeaky clean image. And the local constable made great efforts to funnel any crime in town across the moat. While its citizenry lived mostly in tents and carriages, it was technically its own municipality. A century earlier, a horse-drawn sideshow of gypsies, tramps, and thieves had descended on the town, and the local magistrate had put a nut to be put on the wagons until their bills were paid, and the carnival never made its nut, and they settled into being a convenient red light district the locals could enjoy without any repercussions. That is when it was bought by the Samwell Circus dynasty, which was now threatened by the bad investment of the Calliope. New economic decisions had to be made. Buckminster Huck, the manager of the King's First Royal Bank of Wynn, was determined to close the carnival and give the tiny patch of land to more lucrative investors. Napoleon Samwell himself came to the tiny town to intervene, and his first move was to set the meeting at the carnival instead of the office at Wynn. It was the first time that Buckminster Huck had ever been on the island, at least not in a disguise. And his perfect politician hair shimmered in the sun, and the clouds seemed to part as he strode across the moat, and the performers greeted him with the fanfare usually reserved for more dignified dignitaries. Areola debuted her vaunted Grand Vouloir Rechouinat to the highest audience accolade. Greater than a standing ovation, she got a holy gasp. That's when the audience can't even clap. They are so stunned by the performance. A truly great performer is lucky to get two in a lifetime. And the jaw-dropping spectacle softened the bank's demands. And they said that Pip, Petunia, Areola, and the great Throdini could remain. Their performance for the moment had kept the conference concerns to just the Calliope and the carousel. But there were big changes in store. Its hot water burner was to be converted, and her steam used to power the merry-go-round. The bandstand was used to be modified, and the glorified gizmo was to be hoisted on top of the gazebo at the center of the ride. Piccolo Joe and the other band members stayed for a few days, working as carpenters and plumbers, connecting all the hoses and fittings necessary to create the monstrosity. Barry the banjo player put the gigantic music maker together. It's the only time in history that the banjo player literally made the band. The stallions were sold to the army. Sam loved the horses. He had been the carousel barker since the merry-go-round used actual ponies. And not even the colorful even the colorful carved wooden horses that had replaced the ponies were sold, and they were succeeded by cheaper, fanciful creatures, unicorns, flying zebras, sea monsters, made of the latest vogue, vulcanized rubber. Vulcan and Calliope, Sam muttered to Joe as not to be heard. Why not Bellemoire and Taliesin? We drove the Romans off this island 1,500 years ago, and does anyone remember the names of our gods? Oh, go to on one, Piccolo, Joe said. Circling the outside of the ride were a Pegasus and a Centaur, a Minotaur, followed by other mythological creatures, and at the center were two long dragons that chased each other as the merry-go went round. One was white, the other red, and big billows of steam snorted through their noses as it pushed the leviathans on a pivot. As the ride reached its climax, their hindquarters haunched, and a blast of steam shot through a tea kettle, creating a cacophony against the Calliope. The big brass drum, which served as the modern music box, flipping switches and levers to make the organ play, was melted down and replaced with a paper spindle, serving the same functions, but as its serpentine structure was capable of playing songs longer than Pop Goes the Weasel. It was Sam's new job to replace the spindles with different ditties. Most of them he nor anyone else really recognized. But as the elaborate orchestrations with mechanical drums and train whistles, the bells played in tandem with the pipe organ calypso. There was even a mechanical-style trombone to which a comical boxing glove was affixed that occasionally walloped one of the monkeys as a cuckoo clock cried. There was no banjo. That would be overkill. And the band had worked hard assembling the gadgetry, in some ways harder than they did each Beltane. But by the end of the week, the band had worked themselves out of a job, and there were no dance halls in the Tavern of Wind. Sam Samwell spent much of his morning between rides learning to feed the paper spindles through the contraption. He missed the band, but the new variety of songs gave him a little solace. Amidst the variety of calypso and soca were military marches, many by an American named John Philip Sousa. Sam wondered if that's why they called it a sousaphone. The lines for the ride grew longer, and the demand for the new songs grew louder. And even in his lowly role, Sam was forever the showman. He found that if he shoveled more coal onto the fire grew hotter and the songs spun faster. He learned that speeding up the marches to a fevered pitch turned them from military anthems to a slapstick farce. And after all, what is a carnival but a certain amount of buffoonery? He spooled the paper to yet another number and shoveled on a fresh lump of coal, another military march, with its title stenciled on the side, Entrance of the Gladiators. He recognized this song, but not by its titles. You would too, only you would call it something like That Circus Song. It was from his days in Prague. It was a military march, celebrating a government that no one, including its dual monarchs, were happy with. He liked it sped up that way. He pictured Pip and Petunia chasing the soldiers with a bottle of seltzer, another scoop of coal, and who could forget the composer's name? Julius Fuckett. Yes, pronounced Fuckett. It seemed fitting somehow. Perhaps it wasn't if you spoke only Hungarian, but it made him laugh, and he thought of people in Prague forced to wave flags of an unholy alliance as soldiers they despised marched through the streets, giving rise to chants of "Fuck it! Fuck it! Fuck it!" Another scoop of coal. What if they called it a fuck it phone? He snickered to himself. He pictured the whole army aiming their rifles at Petunia and Pip. And when they pulled the trigger, out popped a flag that read, "Bang!" And as they surrendered to the clowns, the whole tableau unfurled in his mind as he shoveled coal. More coal, faster, cheers, some in fear, some in glee. The red dragon and the white dragon screeched and kicked as if they were fighting each other. Cheers turned to screams as the slow-rolling sleigh turned into a bucking bronco. Steam snorted through their noses as the riders began to panic. Sam was forced to shout, "Hey, Rube!" which is the carnival's code for "I need help over here," but the calliope was simply too loud, and he began pulling levers and switches, and it only made matters worse. The mechanical monkeys popped in and out, banging louvered doors, clanging their cymbals like a Gatling gun. The ride was spinning too fast. The slide trombone broke away from with its boxing gloves, swinging wildly like a prize fighter, clobbering a banking executive in the mall as the clock cried, "Cuckoo!" The end of the paper spindle zipped through the device, and as its loose end flipped with the monkeys, the machine kept spinning, and he tried feeding another roll through the device, but nothing seemed to work. The local Gilly ran this way and that as the dragons began destroying everything in sight. The red tail whipped around and clanged into one of the pillars holding the gazebo aloft. The white snorted a horrible hiss and haunched its hips. Its head lunged into the side. The whole calliope crashed into a menagerie of mythic beasts. There was nothing even Napoleon Samwell could do. The white dragon, it seemed, had won, and the land inside the moat was to be sold to Buckminster Huck. Petunia, Pip, Areola, and the great Throdini were first forced to find honest work. Piccolo Joe and Barry the banjo player already had. They were brought in to bury the mess and begin building a market for cheap machines made from imports from the smokestack cities. In an effort to expedite the process, a team of ponies towed in another invention from the steam era, the steam shovel, and the whole town of Wynn came out for the groundbreaking ceremony. The pageantry was nothing compared to the worst day at the circus. But Mr. Huck did try. I guess banker has just never been synonymous with fun. But he had the entire town as an eager audience, and the most he could muster was a countdown. To his credit, the locals chimed in half enthusiastically. 10, 9, 8. Buckminster Huck's hand gripped the switch. 6, 5, 4. A polite "Hurrah!" radiated from the crowd. 3, 2, 1. The lever was thrown, and then, to this day, no one can say if it happened accidentally. They placed a pole in the ground and made a sign that read, "Merry-go-round rides, 1 bob." Piccolo Joe began to play, and Sam Samwell thought of the old myth, Idriagok Drakakwin. the red dragon will rise again. As he began to work, barking, carnival barking, what he does best, and he shouted, "Step right up!" This has been your Poem of the Week. Stick around for your moment of spin. Hey, how y'all doing? Give me a number between 1 and 3. While you're thinking of that, I will tell you that is a retelling of an ancient myth called The Red Dragon Will Rise Again, set in 19th century Wales. And do we have a number? You got a number for me, Rachel?
Number 2, Joanne, she's with it.
Joanne Tinder. Observations from a 24-hour laundromat. And I'm going to need a number between 1 and 131.
What were those numbers again, Chris?
1 and 131. I'm going to tell you that we are going to embark on a tour that will go from Austin to Houston, 3 shows in New Orleans, Tallahassee, Athens, Georgia, Asheville, North Carolina, Boone, North Carolina, Aiken, South Carolina, and possibly some shows in between.
We're looking at 131.
131? Who is that from?
Joanne, she's got us.
Joanne. Joanne, I don't want to live forever. I want to build a world that will live forever. And it comes complete with a picture. This has been your Poem of the Week, a debut. The Red Dragon Will Rise Again.